So we are here today to interview Dr. Mark Wilde-Ramsey, one of the world's best experts on underwater archaeology, especially as it relates to sunken Civil War ships and other notable ships like Blackbeard's lost pirate ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge. I'm Stephen Burnett, and Chris Varner of Right Point Media in Wilmington is recording with video. Mark, thank you for being here today.
My name is Mark Wilde-Ramsey, and today is May 30th, 2025. We're here in Wrightsville Beach, beautiful Wrightsville Beach. I was not born here. I was born in Oakland, California. My dad was in the Navy, so we moved around a bit. California, I was on the beaches of San Diego, but he ended up in Alexandria, Virginia, and that's where I mostly grew up from 4th grade on. And then when I graduated, I headed down to Wake Forest University, and I've been here in North Carolina since. Met a Carolina gal and stayed.
Awesome, awesome.
Sure, I'm happy to share my stories.
Awesome. So there are 4 main areas that I would like to ask you about today. One area is about the famous ship that is in the sand, so to speak, just off the shoreline of Eagles Island and across from downtown Wilmington, North Carolina, the Nuestra Senora de Regla, also known as the steamer Waccamaw. A second area would be about most of your life at Fort Fisher as Deputy State Archaeologist.
Okay.
A third area is about your position and the experience in some of the important details regarding the excavation of Blackbeard's ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, that was discovered off the coast of North Carolina. You actually wrote a book about it, which we have on the table. And then the last main topic is about Eagles Island and why you have an interest in preserving Eagles Island as a nature park for future generations. You are one of the key members of the Eagles Island Task Force and have a lot of knowledge about the island, including ships that are sunken off the shore, which you have dived on, I think all of them, plus the rice fields cultivated by the Gullah Geechee people, and how these people built the early economic foundations for the beginning of Wilmington through growing rice 200 plus years ago. So with that said, which topic would you like to talk about first?
Well, thank you for that introduction. I would like to start by just telling you how I got into this business, which was a great place to have a career. It really started, I went to Wake Forest and graduated with a degree in anthropology with a sort of a major of archaeology. And it was land archaeology. We went out to New Mexico and had a great field project out on a pueblo out there, and then we did work here in the Piedmont. One of my graduation presents from my parents was scuba gear. They knew I loved water. I'd grown up on the water, so I took courses up in Winston-Salem and dove in these frigid quarries out there. But my professor had mentioned that there was a field school down in Wilmington, and that's how I got down here. It was run both through UNC Wilmington and in cooperation with the Underwater Archaeology branch. That was a state agency. It just was pretty much, it only been in existence about 5 years, and they were training students in this new field of underwater archaeology, and they were also using that opportunity to search mainly for the blockade runners that are prevalent here in the area. So I came down here, I stayed at the beach. We were operating out of Harbor Island right nearby, and doing our survey work with the UNC vessel, and so it was a great start. And learned a lot, and it's what I wanted to do. So I sort of kept my foot in the door. I went back with my wife, was continuing education at ECU. So I was up in Greenville, worked a little bit with archaeologists there, but I continued to tell these people I'm around, and they put me to work a couple of years later on a field school they were doing up on the Roanoke River, recovering cannons from a Confederate Fort Branch. And that's where I got to start, and then eventually did a survey with them of the New Hanover County, all the sites in New Hanover County, 600 and some archaeological sites that we recorded, picking up pottery along the road and out in the fields, and that was all land stuff. But it was out of the underwater people, so I was nearby. And then finally, in 1978, they hired me full time as a underwater archaeologist. So, in that, my position at that time was to look at all permits that were being development piers and bulkheads and anything that disturbed the waters of North Carolina, and because because there's fishes and there's endangered species and all that part of environmental, but the state claims all artifacts that have been abandoned for 10 years and a day. So in state waters or anywhere you can paddle a canoe out to 3 mile limit. So it's quite a expanse. And so my job was to review these permits and decide whether there might be something there. So I spent a lot of time with maps, and I spent a lot of time, we would just go out with our boat and talk to local people and do a little bit of surveying. And it was fantastic job, and I got out and got to see a lot of people. Fort Fisher was a fantastic place too. It's a beautiful setting down there with the live oaks. I could go swimming every day at lunch. It was a tough job, but somebody had to do it. So and we had a great crew together, and we did our own excavations and examined interesting sites that people reported or that we were interested in areas. And so there was a number of sites, and we'll talk about a little more about one that's along the Wilmington waterfront called the Nuestra Senora de Regla, and it was the frames of a steamboat, and that's where, when I first began my the underwater career, the field school, that's the first place they took us. And at low tide, it was like a shipwreck, like you'd be diving on it, only you could access it. And it was 150 feet, and it had steam machinery, and it was a great beginning. Interesting thing is we never knew what the name of it was, and this continued on for about 20 years. And later on, I was working with a group of 8th graders in a special program, and that we focused on that site, and that's how we identified it as the Nuestra Senora de Regla. They did some historical work, and so it's been a great career. We did a lot of work on Eagles Island on the shipwrecks. There's a lot of derelict wrecks over there besides Nuestra Senora de Regla.